Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into a genuinely fascinating slice of human anthropology, how our ancient ancestors dealt with domineering, overbearing individuals. You know, when we picture prehistoric times, we usually imagine this brutal survival of the fittest kind of world, right? Where the biggest, strongest person just automatically ruled the roost with an iron fist. But actually, the reality of early human social dynamics is way more complex. It's highly cooperative, and honestly, it's incredibly relevant to how we interact right now today. We're going to look closely at the specific methods early hunter-gatherers used to maintain peace and equality, and why they absolutely, positively could not afford to let a bully run the show.
So let's just dive right into the core question here. Why was a prehistoric bully not just, annoying, but a literal existential threat to the survival of the entire tribe? Well, picture this. In a harsh, unforgiving environment, humans relied entirely on each other. I mean, you couldn't exactly hunt large game all by yourself. You couldn't forage enough food to make it through a freezing winter alone. Cooperation was literally the technology that kept human beings alive. So when an individual suddenly decided they were more important than the collective, that wasn't just some awkward social faux pas. That was a full-blown crisis that jeopardized everyone's safety, everyone's caloric intake, and basically their entire future.
To be clear, a prehistoric bully wasn't just someone who was a little bit grumpy or loud. We're talking about an aggressive individual who actively hoarded resources and completely threatened the delicate balance of equality that early humans completely relied on to survive. Imagine someone who might try to claim the absolute best cuts of meat from a communal hunt, or maybe they'd use their sheer physical size to intimidate weaker members into giving up their safe sleeping spots. By trying to install themselves at the top of a made-up hierarchy, they were directly attacking the egalitarian structure, that shared equality, that made early human tribes so incredibly resilient in the first place.
To counter this massive threat, our ancestors developed a very specific, escalating scale of justice. Step 1 was gossip. Step 2, shunning. Step 3, exile. And finally, if it came to it, Step 4, lethal force. This wasn't random. It was a highly sophisticated, step-by-step methodology designed to try and bring an aggressive individual back into line with the group's needs before having to resort to drastic measures. Let's start at the very beginning of this scale, with Level 1 deterrence, the Whisper Network.
The subtle yet incredibly effective power of the Whisper Network was really the first line of defense here. When someone started acting aggressively or hoarding the food, the tribe would use social friction, basically gossip and mockery, to put the offender right back in their place. Just imagine you're sitting around a prehistoric campfire, right? Somebody has been throwing their weight around all day long. Instead of confronting them physically and risking injury, the rest of the group might just start whispering. They'd share stories about the bully being clumsy, or they might even start openly laughing at them. And this mockery served a very specific, vital purpose. It publicly undermined the bully's attempt to establish any sort of authority. It was essentially the group's way of saying, hey, we see what you're doing, we don't respect it, and you are definitely not in charge.
And this is where it gets really fascinating. The ancient social pressure that was quite literally a matter of group survival. It is the exact same mechanic as the modern social pressure we usually just brush off as petty office politics or schoolyard drama. The underlying mechanics are totally identical. So when colleagues gossip about a toxic boss by the water cooler, or students mock a schoolyard tyrant, they are instinctively using a prehistoric tool. They're building a coalition against dominating behavior.
But what if they didn't take the hint? That brings us to Level 2 deterrence, the freeze-out. If the bullies simply ignored the gossip and kept up their aggressive behavior, the tribe escalated things. They'd start isolating the bully by shunning them, actively ignoring their demands, or even pushing them out into temporary or permanent exile. This is the point where social pressure becomes a very harsh physical reality. Active shunning meant that if the bully spoke, literally no one answered. If they demanded food, people just walked away. They were treated as if they were completely invisible. Talk about the ultimate silent treatment, right? And if even that didn't work, the group would force the individual to leave the camp altogether, entirely removing them from the social fabric.
Now, to truly grasp how heavy this is, you kind of have to place yourself in the Pleistocene epoch. There are 0 grocery stores out there, no emergency services, and predators, they are absolutely everywhere. A single individual simply could not maintain the constant vigilance required to sleep safely, let alone the energy output needed to hunt successfully all by themselves. So exiling a bully was the tribe making a very stark, very cold calculation. They were saying your behavior is so dangerous to us that we are willing to cast you out to face the wilderness alone, which back then meant almost certain death.
And that leads us to the absolute extreme, Level 3 deterrence, or lethal justice.
So what happened if the bully was just so physically dominant that they literally refused to be exiled and just continued to terrorize everyone? Well, this brings us to the climax of prehistoric justice. This is where the tribe realized the only way to save the collective was to unite and use ultimate force against an irredeemable individual. I mean, think about it. If a bully was physically larger and stronger than anyone else, they might just laugh at the idea of exile and simply take whatever they wanted by force anyway. At that point, the group recognized that the social contract was broken beyond repair. The only possible path forward was for the many to band together against the one.
Through collective lethal action, the weaker members of the tribe could actually use their numbers to overpower and permanently eliminate a physically stronger bully who was threatening their egalitarian way of life. And it's important to note, this wasn't murder in the sense of some chaotic crime of passion. No, this was a highly calculated execution. It was often planned in total secret. Sometimes, as anthropologists have noted, it was even carried out by the bully's very own family members, just to protect the wider group from any future retribution. By acting collectively, the tribe made absolutely sure that no single individual, no matter how physically imposing they were, could ever hold the entire group hostage.
Okay, so we've seen the escalation, but let's look at why it matters today and what our modern takeaway should be.
Having seen this incredibly intense escalation, going from campfire whispers all the way to collective lethal force, we really have to ask ourselves, why does this prehistoric history actually matter to us right now? How does this ancient programming affect how we live today in the 21st century? Well, while modern consequences for bullying obviously look very different from our prehistoric past, the underlying psychological drive to neutralize dominating behavior, it remains exactly the same. Sure, we no longer banish people to the wilderness to be eaten by wolves, and we certainly don't use lethal collective action to solve workplace disputes, thankfully. Instead, we use things like human resources departments, school detentions, and, social media cancellation. These modern methods have been civilized and formalized by society, sure, but they are serving the exact same function, identifying a threat to group harmony and completely neutralizing their power.
The wild thing is, we are literally hardwired to hate bullies today. Why? Because for our ancestors, enforcing fairness and sharing wasn't just about being polite, it was literally the only way the human race survived. This is a massive, massive paradigm shift in how we view human morality. Our inherent desire for justice, our natural instinct to always root for the underdog, and that really deep-seated resentment we feel toward arrogant, dominating people, those aren't just cultural constructs we invented a few hundred years ago. They are straight-up evolutionary adaptations. The humans who tolerated bullies, they didn't survive to pass on their genes. The ones who banded together to enforce fairness, they did.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder the next time you witness unfairness in the world around you. You know that feeling when your blood just boils because someone cuts the line, or a boss takes credit for your hard work, or some internet troll tries to completely dominate a conversation? When that happens, realize that you aren't just experiencing some fleeting emotion. You are actually feeling the ancient echoes of your ancestors. It's a survival mechanism honed over hundreds of thousands of years, urging you to stand up, band together, and protect the tribe. So the very next time you feel that overwhelming urge to call out bad behavior, you really have to ask yourself, is that just you reacting, or is that your prehistoric ancestors speaking through you?